In this short video, I want to look at an important topic that frankly has become a lot more relevant just recently with all the pension changes that have been going on, and that's pension consolidation, which I've called one lump or two, or perhaps one lump or six, depending on how your pension arrangements currently look. So, with no more ado, why has this become more of an issue? Well, in the good old days, as I like to call them, most people didn't worry about pension consolidation, and that's simply because they worked for one employer, perhaps the government, and that employer gave them a defined benefit or final salary pension. Lovely. So you don't really need to worry about a lot of the stuff I'm about to talk about, because contributions go in from an employer, there's a pension fund that manages them, and at the other end as an employee, as the name suggests, you used to get, or many people used to get, a defined benefit, and that was usually linked to your final or average salary. So you might be able to build up a pension that was 2/3 or 50% of your final salary. And frankly, if you stayed working for one employer, who would have to worry about any sort of transfer or consolidation? The answer is not many people. And all the risk sat over with the employer worrying about how much to shovel in so that the defined benefit would come out the other end. But things have changed. It's much more likely, although these do exist, government employees sometimes get them for sure, some companies still have them, but the reality is for most of us, in the private sector in particular, we are stuck with what's called defined contribution or money purchase. Now that's a very different arrangement. I cover it in more detail in other videos, so a summary here. That's where contributions go in from an employer and or an employee, attracting tax relief as they go in, so that's some good news. A fund then holds and manages them for you, and at the other end you get an unknown benefit, and that's because the size of the fund in the middle is driven by the contributions that go in, plus the tax relief, plus any growth, which is a big unknown, minus charges. So what comes out the other end could be any amount. Now, to make matters worse, we have a tendency to be fleet-footed these days. In the old days, my father's friends normally worked for one employer, perhaps for 40 years, but we don't tend to. And some statistics suggest the average employee now stays at one company less than 5 years. And in the youngest age bracket, as people just starting work, even that is optimistic, if you like. People are jumping around all over the place, changing jobs as little as every 2 years. And what's going to tend to happen is you're going to end up, as a result, with a whole load of pension pots of different sizes. And you might sort of say, well, so what? You can just sort of, add them all up at some point and then try and cash them in on the assumption they're that defined contribution type. But actually, there is some merit in certain circumstances in consolidating the whole lot together, doing what are called pension transfers. So amalgamating those pots. And what I want to look at is the kind of pros and cons. I'm not suggesting you should take one path or the other, but it's important to understand the pros and cons and have a think about whether it would be worth, from your point of view, actually combining all these little pots into one. So what are those pros and cons? Well, the cons, if you like, these smaller pots, as the Pension Advisory Service, that's government-backed, have said, can be easily forgotten about. There's one problem. All right, especially if you've got more than one, because every time you move employer, they may have their own arrangement with their own insurance company. Their value may decrease significantly because of charges. Charges can have a disproportionate impact on small schemes as opposed to big ones. And when opened, the money in the pot could end up being not enough to provide annuity. So you've got several problems there. And one at the end there is the idea that when you come to sort of cash these in because you want to retire, you may not be able to get the annuity you want, if indeed you can get an annuity at all. The gates may be closed by the insurance company offering you that income stream. So let's take a balanced view. Let's look at the pros and cons here. Let's say on the pro side, why would I take 6 pension pots? So I've moved jobs 5 or 6 times. I've got a pot with one company, a pot with another company, a pot with another company. Why would I consolidate? Well, the opportunity to seek out better performance. Some of the older style schemes may simply not deliver the performance you want. Wider access to investment opportunities. If you were to consolidate into a self-invested personal pension, for example, you may find you can actually choose more different types of investment. You've got more open to you than with some of the older style of schemes. Easier administration. It's got to be easier just to get kind of one summary statement on a regular basis than have to manage 6, and that's even assuming you can keep track of the 6. It's a big danger that you lose track of these little pension pots. There's a huge pot of money, according to some statistics produced by the government, that suggests that people have simply forgotten about pension pots and have not claimed them. That's a bit of a disaster. And you may end up with better buying power. So big is beautiful in pension world to some extent. If you've got a big pot, you can probably negotiate a potentially better deal in annuity terms, for example, than with a tiny one. And some tiny pots won't even get you an annuity at all. However, that doesn't mean you should rush out and start consolidating everything together. Far from it. You need to consider transfer penalties, so you may be charged for exiting. Some old styles of pensions actually have better terms than you can get now on the latest style of pension, and or loyalty bonuses. So for staying with a particular provider, you may get a loyalty bonus, and this all needs to be weighed up. There's a short-term hassle. It is a bit painful. I'll go through the process briefly at the end. There's quite a lot of sort of paper shuffling literally and metaphorically, if you like. And do you want the responsibility ultimately for the investment decisions that come with potentially, say, a self-invested personal pension? Now, you can get help with that, but it may be that you prefer the simple older style of scheme. That may work for you. It's a balance between the style of the scheme and the charging structure and the cost and hassle of moving over to another scheme. Now, what can you transfer? First off, there will be some people out there who've got the old style of defined benefit final salary pension. Those are valuable, and to be honest, for most people, transferring them over to a money purchase style of plan probably won't make sense. So there, the government correctly recommends that in most cases you seek advice, all right? Because it's probably going to be better for you to stay in there. You may not be able to match the benefits you get by switching to defined contribution or money purchase. If you're not in a defined benefit scheme, then there are plenty of types of pension that are open to transfer or consolidation. And I won't go through all of these in detail, but you've got personal pensions. Those are the ones you take with you potentially, your own pension from employer to employer. Stakeholder pensions, that's the older style, pre the self-invested personal pension style, if you like. Occupational defined contribution schemes, those are schemes that your employers set up. They may not be as portable as your own personal pension. Retirement annuities, that's an old style of contract. Other self-invested personal pensions, you can actually consolidate SIPs into each other if you like. Additional voluntary contributions and executive pension plans. So if you decide to go down this route, there are quite a few pots that are open to the consolidation process. Now, just be a little bit careful. The government have said that with defined benefit pensions, where the end benefit or the pot is worth a certain amount, you should definitely take advice. Personally, I would say think carefully about whether you need advice before you consolidate any of these. All right. Now, I won't go through every single one in detail, but the point is, and just to highlight one in particular, do read through the small print, if you like, of your existing pension arrangement, just in case there are better terms in there you'd actually get from a switch or a consolidation. So don't just sort of jump in, and you may have any one of these various different types of pension, including smaller self-administered schemes, often set up for groups of company directors, for example, AVCs, additional voluntary contributions, deferred annuities, and so on. So in other words, take each consolidation, each pot on its merits. Don't just sort of get bullied into doing some big consolidation when actually it may not be the best thing in all cases. How to do it? Again, you may or may not need some help on this. It is a bit of a process, but the benefits once you've done it can be quite substantial. First of all, you've got to choose where these pots are going to end up. So choose the receiving pension fund. Then you normally complete the relevant transfer forms for the receiving scheme. Okay, and each receiving scheme may have a slightly different set of forms for you to fill in there. Then you need to complete the relevant transfer forms for each scheme that you're transferring into that scheme, and each provider may have a slightly different process in terms of can it be done online, does it have to be done by post, and how much information you have to provide, and so on. That does vary. And then finally, decide how you want the transferred funds, once you've got them all into this consolidated pot, to be allocated. So quite a bit to it. If you've got the time, the inclination to do it all yourself, fine, but maybe an area to think about getting some help. A lot of ground covered there, big topic. Any questions, do feel free to email me at the usual place.